New Thinking Aloud is presented by the California Institute for Human Science, a fully accredited university offering distant learning graduate degrees that focus on mind, body, and spirit. The topics that we cover here. We are particularly excited to announce new degrees emphasizing parapsychology and the paranormal. Visit their website at cihs.edu.
Thinking Aloud. Conversations on the leading edge of knowledge and discovery with psychologist Jeffrey Mishlove.
Hello and welcome. I'm Jeffrey Mishlove. Our topic today is going to be a further exploration of the concept of Platonic Surrealism developed by my guest, Kevin Cann. Kevin is a collaborator with Jeffrey Kripal, a professor of religion at Rice University, on his book, How to Think Impossibly. Kevin, as I mentioned, is the originator of the concept of Platonic Surrealism. I want to refer you now to my previous interview with Kevin, the first interview on Platonic Surrealism. You'll learn a great deal there, including how Kevin actually conjured up a triangle-shaped UFO. Kevin is based in California, and now I'll switch over to the internet video. Welcome, Kevin. It is a pleasure to be back with you once again. Your interview on the first portion of the conversation we had about Platonic Surrealism was very well received on New Thinking Aloud. Viewers have been requesting to have you back, so here you are again, and we're going to dive much more deeply now into the philosophical system that you call Platonic Surrealism. So I'm delighted to be with you.
I'm very delighted to be with you. It is such an honor. You're an icon. I'm deeply honored.
We're going to talk today about fungus and mitochondria. That might seem like odd topics, but what it seems to be suggesting is that something maybe Plato himself didn't have as much of a grasp on as you do, which is the biological aspects of Platonic Surrealism.
I have a system called Platonic Surrealism, and in the grand style of Neoplatonism everywhere, it is founded in some ways from Plato, but that doesn't mean I know anything much about it. I just kind of suck stuff out of the void, and then I find out, oh, someone wrote about this.
Your creative process, as I understand it, is largely based on your direct experience. And one of the things that you've written about, for example, is that you have had what you describe as a direct encounter with nonhuman intelligences associated with fungi.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I really want this information to get out on the interweb. See, I dated myself, but no one calls it the interweb anymore. But fungus is a web. It's a mycelial network. So I said interweb to do a metaphor there with the fungi. So, actually, sir, at first, when I first started, here I'm saying I see things. Yeah, you know our culture. They're just going to have to deal with it. When I was young, it happened when I hit puberty. I remember the day I hit puberty, I felt the hormone descend my body. And I think it was also the day that Alan Watts died. So there's an interesting story there, too. He's a real influence and a hero of mine. I honestly think a bit of Alan Watts ricocheted off me when he died. I really think so. I really admire the man. When I was in the womb, I got to always start when I was in the womb. I felt a vast golden presence, and I was in the middle of it. It was very beautiful. So I started getting images in my mind of beings. And it was, at first it was a little disturbing. I felt like I knew these beings, but it still was a little disturbing. I kept getting these images of animal-headed men. The ibis. And, I hadn't been studying Egypt. That's what it looked like. And especially crocodile-headed. And, of course, to a young person, a crocodile-headed entity is pretty scary. But I didn't understand what they were, and I'm not sure they entirely understood what I was. I know a lot of people would say they were just imaginary friends, and I was being abused as a child, so, yada, yada, yada. But I still see things all these years later, and trust me, I am not abused now. I consider myself happy, well-adjusted, living a normal life, and all that. But I want to get into the real important thing about these beings. There seemed to be some sort of understanding between me and them that they were allowed to, and this is going to be creepy, and I'm going to have to do some damage control, but this was my understanding at the time. I was just fine with them, quote, feeding on me. And I could feel them, and I felt them touching me. I felt these prickles around my body. And I had a conversation with one of them. And no, I don't hear auditory hallucinations. And I say conversations. There was a stream of knowing between me and the entity. And this entity just mentioned, you see, I don't go seeking entities. And I don't go try to conjure them up. And, like I've put before, I don't claim to have, the commander of the Zetar fleet of Regulus, on tap to spew all human wisdom and alien wisdom. I don't do that. I just live as part of a larger ecosystem, like I say we all do. So the entity quipped that in the old days, they would draw blood through the pores of the skin, and dust and skin particles, and they would form little bodies so that people could interact with them and see them with their eyes. And I'd never, come on, I was from Minnesota at the Bible Belt. I didn't know about this. In fact, I don't know if it's true. I just know the entity said it was true. So it was very real to me. Now, I didn't know quite what to do with all this. I never took it as evil or demons, whatever. Of course, probably everybody else would have. But that's their malfunction. I'm not responsible for their unsophisticated thinking.
I understand that you just said they were feeding on you.
Correct.
In other words, if they were like normal biological creatures, they would be taking bites out of you.
Well, it certainly felt like that sometimes. I could feel the prickling on my skin.
I think if I understand what you're saying, we are surrounded by fungi. There are spores in the atmosphere all around us. Some people suggest there are spores in outer space even. But what you seem to be saying is that even though these spores may be very amorphous, they are somehow intelligent. They can embody themselves as appearances of physical creatures that we can interact with.
Indeed. Actually, I didn't come to the understanding that fungus was involved for a lot of years because, there's all the mistaken thinking from, I'm unapologetic about my views about religion and spirituality in general. I mean, this is an evolutionary process of our understanding better. Sometimes science helps, sometimes science hinders. We need both aspects of our mind to make sense of this. And I didn't understand there was fungus involved, actually, till 1981. I'd like to share an event from 1981 that was heavy on my heart for a very long time. And I want to do it in a way that doesn't cause a stir with the organization. There was a world organization behind the event, and I don't want to get them angry with me. I respect a lot of what they do, but I'm going to talk about a person. The person was a little bit of a rogue, as far as I can tell, kind of broke off from their organization. So I'm not going to say what the organization, but I really learned about fungus with this event. So it was 1981, and I was living in a spiritual commune for a little while before I went in the Navy and became a nuclear engineer. And the head of the commune, he said that we had to go see this guy. He was a world famous person. He was renting out auditoriums and giving speeches about his view of reality. And I'm not going to even say his view of reality because it would be instantly obvious who he was. There's only been like one character like this in the history of the world. But we went to see this guy. And there was, I don't know how many people. I've said 5,000. I've said 10,000. I really don't know. It was a pretty big auditorium. And we went there to see this gentleman. And he was a mystic and whatnot. And, he was giving a speech about love and light and all this and his philosophy of religion. And I immediately started having the most powerful visions I've ever had in my life. Well, except when I was dead, that was a very powerful visionary thing too. So what I saw immediately, this was in 1981, okay? I saw what would be called now a gray alien, but it was inside his body. And I got this sense of immense age, and I got this sense of immense decay. I knew I probably wasn't seeing the precise physical form of the entity inside of him, but I think I got a really good sense of what it was. And it took me years. I mean, at first I go, wait a minute, that looks kind of like a mummy. But it wasn't really, but it also looked like, well, frankly, Whitley Strieber's Gray Aliens. And it was internal to him. And there was this sense of immense age and decay. And you see, that was the hint, you see, because fungus are agents of decay and reprocessing and distribution of the nutrients, and then they're in a symbiotic relationship with host beings, and they feed. You see, that's kind of at the heart of this. I really want this to be understood. People are so prone to go, demons, they're feeding on me. Well, no. Humans are part of a larger ecosystem where, we are like power cells in a way. And I hate to even reference it, but I can't avoid it. The Matrix, they called Neo Coppertop. And, that was the most ridiculous premise. The human body doesn't generate hardly any electricity. So the premise of that movie was just scientifically absurd. But you know what? I think that the writers actually did see a bit of what I see. And, this is a phenomenon that's very common, So the presenter said that so-and-so was coming back to the earth. People always want some sky daddy to come and rescue us because we're not good enough to live our own lives and fix our own problems. People always want someone to live for them, take care of their problems for them. So I immediately saw these black holes forming around him, and all these little entities came streaming out of these black holes. And I saw they were attaching themselves to the base of the skull of the audience. And they had them in kind of a euphoric state. And there was some sort of it looked like they were feeding on them again. And so this was all very disturbing, to 19-year-old Kevin, very disturbing. I don't know that I want to go into the beings that much. I have a fair idea about them. And they did certainly have a fungal element to them. But they also had a cybernetic element to them. Now I sound like PK Dick. It seems that sometimes fungus has sort of an artificial intelligence sometimes. It's probably not unusual. Beings evolve and they want to improve themselves and they want more processing capacity. So even fungus, which in a way is like an artificial intelligence, sometimes might evolve with AI. Now, should I take all this literally, or should this be imaginal, or both? I say both.
Let me summarize for a moment what I think you're saying, Kevin, which is that we are surrounded by other living entities that we don't recognize because we imagine that non-human entities must be like us, must be animals. But what you're saying is that there are other forms of intelligence all around us, like fungi, that are they are not animals. And I don't know if you are the one, but somebody recently sent me an article about plasma. Big plasma clouds in between the Earth and the Moon have recently been discovered, and the suggestion is that even things like clouds of plasma in outer space could be conscious entities.
I didn't send that to you, but I did write a paper on that back in 2014, and I sent it to Jacques Vallée's Invisible College. I was in contact with those people back then.
So we're looking at a wide variety of biological possibilities that tend to be overlooked by people. And initially, when I introduced you, we talked about mitochondria, for example. Mitochondria exist inside of every single human cell. But my understanding is at one time, billions of years ago, mitochondria were thought to be separate entities, and somehow they merged with us. We are in effect symbiotic beings filled with these mitochondria, and they play an important role in human life, providing us with the energy that we need to accomplish all the things that humans do. Correct.
It's the most fascinating thing. It's accepted science now. It was controversial for a while. I believe the lady's name was Lynn Margolis. It's just accepted science now. And when I saw the symbiosis of mitochondria with us, I started to realize the big picture. And I think this is important. I think this is, all experiencers and NDEers and they think that, by God, they got all the right stuff about everything. And everyone should listen to them. And, they want to save the world. Well, I suppose I've got elements of that in my personality. But I think I'm onto something here. I really do. And apparently you think I'm onto possibly something. It's interesting. It's worth, new thinking is allowed, right?
The big point that we need to make here is that the cosmos, the universe itself, is alive. And it's alive in a sense that parallels what we think of as biological life.
Indeed. A lot of scientists nowadays go, when they look at the cosmic web, they go, dang, that looks like brain cells, with dendrites all communicating. And they're right. It is, as far as I can see. I go, I better finish my story with the gentleman. So, I was a dumb, self-righteous young mystic, and I didn't like that these creatures were feeding on the audience. They were putting them into religious ecstasy, some of them, and they would freeze. Does that sound familiar to abduction narratives? See, in abductions, when people stop moving, it's so that there can be the energy transfer without interruption. That's the purpose. Are there all these hybridization and all these other things? Well, I can't say, and it's a big universe, and there's multiple beings and multiple things happening. I'm not poo-pooing any of that. But really, it could just be a cover story for keep the person entertained and pacified, and we'll do the energy transfer. And again, that sounds creepy and like feeding. But here's the thing. Okay, fine, I'll finish the story. So I didn't like this. So the golden power that had always been with me since the womb, it flared up like the size of 1 billion stars. And this is going to sound so creepy. I never thought I'd be able to say this. It swallowed the presenter. It swallowed the streaming life forms. It swallowed the, quote, gray alien. It swallowed them. And it's how reality works. If we're all part of a giant body, these things happen. Now, did I actually digest him or his entities? No, that's really not how it works, actually. And that's the good news. But upon doing that, the presenter screamed. I still remember it like it happened today. His head fell back and he screamed for all he was worth. And he said there was interference, and he ran his ass out of the auditorium after only speaking for 10 minutes, and he was gone. So he didn't appreciate the intervention there. Now, was he doing, quote, evil and spooky demonic things like I thought at the time, because I hadn't had my thinking become clear yet? Or was it all a giant lesson for him and for me so that I could understand what was happening and in the future have this conversation with you? I really don't know. But I like the latter explanation better.
It seems to me if we take a look at the universe as the cosmos as a whole, as a living organism, and we are part of that organism, just like the mitochondria inside of each of our cells are part of our organism, you go so far as to suggest that human beings are like the mitochondria of the cosmos.
Indeed. And in a way, I would say Carl Sagan, though he would roll over in his grave, he was against this sort of thing. But, he said that we are star stuff in the universe getting to know itself. He said that. Mm-hmm. And a lot of scientists say that. And it's true. We are star stuff, and we are a way for the universe to get to know itself. And for the universe to get to know itself, it can't just hide in the Platonic realms of idealized forms. The universe can use our conscious rational mind, which is like a microscope, and laser focus in on little things instead of being all Mr. Cosmic fungus headed like I tend to be unless I'm having a conversation like this. So, yeah, I am saying that, and as you know from the first video, I'm really big on the concept of potentiality, which is the field of all potentials. And then awareness arises due to a slight instability. I have a memory of arising as awareness within this field. I have a memory of it. And then awareness plays with the potentials and goes, okay, it's like a cookbook. Okay, well, if I go from this node to potential of this node, and I'll throw all this together, and voila, I'll have a world where I'm this guy called Kevin talking to this guy named Jeffrey. And I will experience this, and I will learn, and I will grow, and I will have fun. And it won't just be everything happening at once, and I can't concentrate. So here we are. Now, I am saying, to be very specific about this, that human beings are mitochondria. And I really have a deep desire for this information to get out there for consideration. I know that I'm like this mad revelator sort of guy spewing this nonsense, so to speak. But we need this new thinking. That's why I adore you and your show. We need new thinking, things to discuss.
Well, how is it that human beings are mitochondria?
Awareness interacting with biological beings generates consciousness. Now, here's the fun thing about this. The reductionist neurologists, they think that consciousness is just a kind of a random delusion generated by parts of the brain, but of course they've never found any pieces that actually substantiate this wild theory of theirs. But in a sense, the entire human body generates consciousness, you see. We are like a crystal matrix. And awareness, when it inhabits a body like this, it ricochets around the matrix of the body and it generates consciousness. So I studied Kundalini, the evolutionary energy in man, and I'll just say it, I was in the Gopi Krishna organization for like 10 years. And I didn't get along with them so well because they wanted me to figure out the mystery of Kundalini, and I did. I figured it out. But it didn't agree with what Gopi Krishna said. So, of course, I got shown the door. And at one point, it did the historical thing of suddenly flaring up from the base of my spine until it went out the top of my head. It did do this. But in my case, it wasn't just one of these little flashes of energy feeling sort of thing. I'd been incubating this consciousness in my body for years using something, Trika Shaivism or Shaivism. You can concentrate consciousness in your body so it becomes like a, well, there was that experiment where the scientists accidentally created an entity by just believing in him. That's the same sort of thing. In the book, How to Think Impossibly with Jeff Paul, I called it Tulpa energy. Mm-hmm. That was back then in 2013. I was calling it Tulpa energy. I recognized the cultural reference.
Let's define now for our viewers who don't know what the word tulpa means.
Right. It's like if you could use your imagination to very strongly imagine something so hard that it becomes kind of real. A thought form. So, this is a phenomenon I've noticed for years, has a lot of explanatory power for a lot of things. But here's the key thing, and you can talk to the most grand poobahs of every religion and spiritual system out there, and almost none of them know this, but there's a few that do. I recently collaborated with a scholar with a PhD on this topic, and he said, yeah, you're right. What you're talking about has happened. So what happened is, this presence in me wanted to rejoin the whole. It lit up the whole world around me when I lived with it for about a year. But at a certain point, it, quote, wanted to go home. So it started raising up in my body till it hit the top of my head, and then it couldn't get out. Now that's pretty unusual for a spiritual entity not being able to get out the top of my head. So it headed for this spot, the soft fontanelle. And I felt this burning. I felt this kind of moving around of skull sutures. I know that sounds crazy. But there was this burning. I could smell the burning. I mean, it was a physical odor. I could smell the burning. I could feel the burning. And it did a jailbreak, so to speak, and then it escaped out the top of my head. Well, now here, this was very disturbing, okay? This was extremely disturbing to me. You know why? Because like a lot of still newbie mystics, and I was still a newbie mystic, back in 2013, I hadn't put it all together yet. And who knows, I act like I know everything. I probably haven't put it all together now, but I've come a ways. That's all I'm saying. So I'd had the bad assumption that I was the entity and that I would be going with it. But in correcto mundo, it was separate from me, and my awareness did not follow it. It just left. And I felt like 90% of my being had been like harvested. I was so disturbed by this. I was so disturbed I couldn't talk about it. I was so disturbed. And it left. And there's people that say, oh, you had a demon and it left. Well, it was the most wonderful being. My body generated this substance, and then it joined the larger ecosystem.
The point you're making is we're not really separate from the larger ecosystem, whether it's a plasma cloud in outer space or a mycelium network that runs for thousands of miles under the earth. We're all part of these, and just as I think you're going further in saying, just as humans can sometimes project their thought forms and they become substantial and real, such as all of the lore concerning tulpas, these other entities, whether they're fungi or plasma clouds or mitochondria, can do something similar.
Absolutely, absolutely. So our role is to generate this, what I'm now calling dream energy or imaginal energy. And as a matter of fact, I'm saying, because I've had discussions with life forms that use this energy to exist. I say that the fairies are real. And as one example, I'm saying actually that they are the pre-Indo-European folks before the horticulturist phase of humanity overly developed the ego and it started browning out the fairies. I've had discussions of history with these folks, and they're very clear about it. They are formed by and live off what I was originally calling human death fragments. So, when a person dies, all this energy they've been generating for a lifetime that they've been mistakenly assuming was them or their soul or whatever. Now, soul and spirit and all that, that's a whole different topic. And here's the key. Humans also are generators of this dream energy. Well, why is that? Well, humans have a biology that lets them be dreamers, right?
Yeah.
So if imaginal beings exist, and well, they do, and everything is made out of information, so to speak, then good stories are the best nourishment. And bad stories are the worst nourishment. Now, humans currently are tight asses. They want to hang on to their stories. They don't want to share. They want everything to be all egocentric and negative and scary and whatnot. So they hoard. They hoard their dream energy that they generate. They have, you know what? Christians do this. Atheists do this. Everyone does this. It's our biology. It's how we interact with the laws of physics and awareness.
We hoard our dream energy. You'll have to explain that a little more. I don't know, what does it even mean to hoard my dream energy?
And I'm autistic. I'm not thinking I'm Commander from Zeta 9 or anything like that. I'm autistic, and we tend to differentiate between regular people and autistic people. We barely feel human. It's just how it is. Ask any autistic. So, but I'm a human too. I'm just on the 1% of the bell curve somewhere of human. So, humans, which are a hybrid creature of so-called matter, energy, mind, and awareness and all that, we generate energy. This dream energy. Now, how do I better define dream energy? It's a tough one to better define that. But apparently there's aspects of physics. I think this could be proven in the lab eventually. Get someone who's good at generating this stuff and concentrating it. I bet Dean Radin could find it with a sensor. I bet he could. This is not bullshit. This is real. It's real, but it's real in terms of kind of like a substance or wave density. You could call it quantum if you want. I don't do the quantum mysticism thing. And it powers other forms of life that need this sort of output. Just like we need to break down living things, plants and animals in our stomach, we need to break them down so that we can then live with that source. Now, fortunately for humans, you see, we are not being, quote, digested. Not us. I mean, number one, our essential being is beyond time and space, so it couldn't be digested no matter what. But even so, nobody wants to... I wrote this in a paper I sent you. Nobody really wants to harm humans. Now, isn't that strange? Why don't the demons harm people? Why don't the UFOs, if they're all evil, why don't they harm people? We are their mitochondria. They're not going to harm us. Now, will they yank our chain? So that it's... I had a little joke about the phenomenon, UFO entities and whatnot, or fairies, whatnot. Might they scare us or bedazzle us so that we drop our lunch money and they can have some? Yeah, they do it constantly. That explains UFOs and the anomalous and fairies. It explains so much. We're so tight-ass with what we generate. We identify with it overly and in the wrong way. One of our roles is to generate this stuff. And it explains so much of the anomalous.
Dream energy.
Yes.
What is dream energy?
It's awareness stirring up something like matter to be metabolized into a food substance for other sentient information entities. So that's what it is.
So in other words, what you're saying is there's a class of non-human entities. They are so different from us as biological creatures that we don't recognize them, but they feed on essentially they feed on the thoughts that we produce.
Yes. The matter vivified by cosmic mind. Really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there is a touch of the, quote, divine in us. And it leaves us footprints in this substance, the dream substance. We are little co-creators with the absolute. See, it's not creepy at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's really not.
It's part of, I guess, what we might call a psychic ecosystem.
Yes. Yes. It's why I love Josh Cutchin. What a guy. I'm becoming friends with him. What a wonderful human being. What a wonderful author. What a creative thinker. People ask me who inspired me. Well, the universe, okay. But also Josh Cutchin. Also Jeff Kripal. Also Bernardo Kastrup. Also Nietzsche. Also a number of people. They inspire me, but I don't use their words. I just let them vault me to a place where I know what they're talking about. Sometimes, or I just do it without them. But yeah. I think in a sense they're with me. We're all together in this. All of us, the living, the dead. So it shows the monads, the individual basic units of awareness first becoming self-aware that powers all of physical and imaginal reality. They're like these blue stars with tendrils going everywhere, and that's our most core being right there. Now, for the Buddhists, I gotta say, you guys are right. Even monads are temporary. They might only live 100 trillion years, and then they've had enough, and they take a nap until another 100 trillion years later, and then they form again. So, soul but not soul. Both are true. So, yeah, consciousness is a cosmic currency of monads, of these giant blue stars like I saw when I died. And they trade in it with each other. And it's kind of funny, actually. It's like cryptocurrency. See, cryptocurrency has local computers just thrumming away to create this stuff out of nothing. And then it has value because people agree that it has value. Well, we're cryptocurrency generators for the universe. We take that awareness, we use our bodies that we're blessed to have, and it thrums away until it creates this consciousness, enhancing and enabling cosmic cryptocurrency dream stuff substance. And if you look at spirituality, if you look at religion, if you look at ufology, it goes right down the center of all those fields. All of them. Mm-hmm. All of them. When a UFO appears and we're dazzled, you know what happens? We drop our lunch money. And some of this dream substance oozes out to the, quote, UFO, and people say they feel a contact with it. That's because they finally took the broomstick out of their ass and relaxed enough to let their fundamental being, through the media of this currency, talk to the other life form. Mm-hmm. That's why UFOs do what they do. It's not that they're from this or that planet or this or that appearance matters. Everybody responds differently to a different appearance and a different meaning. They just want us to share. And the reason they want us to share is it's our job. We are cosmic mitochondria. Now, is that all that we are? No. That's just part of what we are. Like the little mitochondria in every cell of our body, they do their little mitochondria thing still. But you know what? They've got this big body wrapped around them. food, nutrients, protection. There's nothing negative about this. It is the very stuff of life.
It seems to me, Kevin, that what you're saying is that if we view the entire cosmos, the entire universe, even the multiverse beyond this universe, as a living organism and apply the principles of living organisms and begin to look at our role as humans in this larger picture, there are many insights to be derived.
Yes, sir.
Well, I think we have completed lesson number 2 in Platonic Surrealism.
Excellent.
Kevin, once again, it's been a joy to be with you. I have to commend you on the sharp provocations that you managed to constantly produce. I think Jeffrey Kripal is definitely correct when he holds you up as an example of how to think impossibly. So once again, a joy to be with you, and I look forward to future conversations.
Thank you, sir. It's a real honor.
My pleasure, Kevin. And for those of you watching or listening, thank you, because you are the reason that we are here.
Book 3 in the new Thinking Aloud dialogue series is UFOs and UAP, Are We Really Alone? Now available on Amazon.
You can now download a free PDF copy of issue number 8 of the new Thinking Aloud magazine, or order a beautiful printed copy. Go to newthinkingaloud.org